The Mafia King's Obsession. Chapter 2. Morning sun slanted across the frescoed ceiling of the villa's east studio, pooling gold over the plaster angels that Isabella coaxed back to life with a sable brush. Dust motes drifted in the hush, settling on her riot of dark hair, pulled into a loose knot. She hummed under her breath, the tune rising and falling with each measured stroke. A faint footstep sounded behind her, followed by the unmistakable clink of porcelain. She smiled without turning. "That had better be the good espresso," she said. Lorenzo set a delicate cup on the trestle beside her palette. "Single origin from Napoli, sweet as sin. I considered adding sugar but decided you were sweet enough for both of us." "Shameless," she murmured, cheeks warming. She dabbed a smudge of verdigris from the cherub's wing, then leaned back to examine her work. Gentle hands came to rest on her shoulders, kneading away knots gathered from hours bent over plaster. She let her head fall back against his chest, breath hitching when he brushed his lips to her crown. "Any progress?" His voice was a low vibration against her spine. "Almost finished with the underpainting. The original colors were lost under soot, but look." She guided his hand to a swath of newly revealed azure. "It feels like waking up a dream." He traced the line of her arm. "As you did for me." She caught his wandering fingers. "Less flattery, more breakfast. You promised croissants." "I promised you the world," he corrected, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Croissants are the easy part." Laughing, Isabella set her brush aside. They moved through sunlit hallways, passing carved doorways and the scent of blooming jasmine. In the courtyard, a table waited beneath a lemon tree laden with fruit. Fresh pastries steamed beside a jar of fig jam. A single yellow bloom rested on the linen cloth. Lorenzo held out her chair with a flourish that made her roll her eyes even as her heart fluttered. "Still wooing me, Moretti?" she teased. "Until my last breath," he said lightly, but his eyes held a solemn promise that made her pulse skip. They ate in companionable silence broken only by birdsong and the distant hum of vineyard workers gathering the early harvest. Isabella reached for another croissant. Lorenzo intercepted her hand, turning her wrist to admire the bracelet that glinted beneath the sleeve of her linen blouse. "You wear it every day," he observed. "I like the weight." She toyed with the marble encased in crystal, the childhood token that had bound their fates. "A reminder." "Of captivity?" He sounded uncertain, almost afraid. She squeezed his fingers. "Of choices, mine, yours, ours." He leaned forward to kiss the inside of her wrist when a shadow crossed the courtyard archway. Matteo, the head of security, cleared his throat. "Scusi, signor. A courier just arrived. Said it was urgent." Lorenzo's brows knit. "At this hour?" he insisted. Matteo's gaze flicked to Isabella, concern etched in the lines around his mouth. "No return address." "Bring it," Lorenzo said. A sealed envelope changed hands. Its ivory surface bore no marks save for a faint smudge where someone's thumb had pressed too hard. Lorenzo slid a slim blade from his pocket, sliced the flap, and drew out a set of glossy photographs. Isabella saw his shoulders tense, saw the slight tremor in fingers that had once held a gun as steady as prayer. "What is it?" She reached across the table. He shuffled the photos so she couldn't see. "Nothing for you to worry about." "That tone," she said, heart clenching. "It's something I'll worry about whether I see it or not. Show me." He hesitated. She stood and circled the table, plucking the stack from his hand before he could stop her. The first image caught her breath. She and Lorenzo at the marketplace last week, laughing over ripe peaches. The next showed them through the studio window, her bent over the fresco while he watched, devotion plain in his eyes. Each picture was intimate, stolen, framed by shadows. The last held a short typed line beneath the photograph. "Old debts remain unpaid." Her stomach dropped. "This is Carlo Vitale." Lorenzo's jaw flexed. His handwriting? No, but his style, yes. "You told me he left Milan, that he was finished." "I believed it." He folded the envelope, sliding it into his jacket. He must have learned about the board vote. Without the seat, I'm no longer useful to him. He sees leverage. Which means me. She wrapped her arms around herself. What do we do? I do what's necessary. He rose, already calculating. I'll double the guards. Cancel the gala tonight. Move you to Rome. No. The word cracked through her fear like lightning. We agreed. No more cages. This isn't a cage, Isabella, it's precaution. It feels the same. She touched his chest, fingers splaying over his heart. Talk to me. Share the weight you keep dragging behind you. Don't shut me out. He looked away, eyes glittering. If anything happened to you, then we face it together, she said fiercely. We stand in the same storm, or we don't stand at all. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Vitali invited himself to the gala. Good, let him see us strong, not hiding. It will paint a target. We already have one. She took his hand, threading their fingers. We host the gala, surround ourselves with allies, and keep our eyes open. He studied her, pride softening the hard edges of his face. When did you become the fearless one? Somewhere between Istanbul and here, she said, voice gentle. When I realized love isn't a weakness. It's armor. His breath left him in a shudder. He pulled her into his arms, resting his forehead against hers. I'll keep you safe. And I'll keep you human, she whispered. Matteo coughed discreetly. Orders, Signor? Prepare for tonight as planned, Lorenzo said, not releasing her. Increase surveillance at the south gate. Rotate guards every hour. No one enters without a name on my list. He kissed Isabella's brow. And send Caterina up with whatever gown she believes no one can resist? Isabella smacked his shoulder, laughing despite the knot in her stomach. I don't dress to disarm rivals. Tonight you dress to destroy them, he murmured. Late afternoon draped the villa in apricot light. In her dressing suite, Isabella twirled before the mirror, the silk of a silver-blue gown whispering across marble tiles. The bodice hugged her torso, the off-shoulder sleeves, leaving collarbones bare where Lorenzo's lips had lingered a dozen times in passing since noon. Caterina adjusted a final pin in Isabella's hair, sweeping dark waves into a loose chignon. Perfetto, the stylist pronounced, stepping back. He won't breathe. He will, Isabella said, nerves fluttering. He just might forget how for a moment. A knock preceded Lorenzo's voice. May I enter? Caterina winked and slipped out as Isabella called, Yes. Lorenzo stepped inside wearing a tailored midnight tuxedo. He halted, struck silent, eyes roaming over her as though committing every inch to memory. She watched a blush rise across his cheekbones, an endearing contrast to the lethal stillness that used to shroud him. You're staring, she teased, smoothing an invisible wrinkle. I'm praying to every saint that Carlo loses his tongue tonight, he murmured. Then perhaps he won't ruin the vision before me. She crossed the floor, tugging his lapel until their lips met in a lingering kiss that tasted of honeyed figs and impending danger. He sighed against her mouth, one hand cupping the back of her neck, the other smoothing the gown's silk at her hip. Eyes open, she reminded when they parted. No more blindsides. He pressed a small transmitter into her palm. Open channel to Matteo. You say the word, they'll move. Thank you, she whispered, slipping it into her clutch. Arm in arm, they descended the grand staircase to the courtyard, now transformed. Strings of fairy lights wove through olive branches, casting dapples over linen-draped tables glimmering with crystal. The scent of roses, mingled with aged Brunello, poured into waiting glasses. Guests in couture clustered, laughter rising in lilting waves. A string quartet filled the evening with strains of Vivaldi. They made a striking entrance. Conversation tapered as heads turned to watch the couple who, rumor claimed, had tamed a dynasty's darkness with love. Lorenzo's hand remained light on Isabella's waist, guiding but not claiming. She felt the warmth of his respect as keenly as the satin against her skin. Diplomats, vintners, artists, faces both familiar and new, offered greetings. Isabella smiled, engaged, scanning for the one presence she dreaded. An hour passed in a haze of polite chatter, Lorenzo's palm occasionally brushing the small of her back to assure himself she was near. Her heart raced not from fear but the electric thrill of standing beside him as an equal. Then she saw Carlo Vitale. He glided through the crowd like oil across water. Sharp suit, silver cufflinks, hair slicked back with meticulous care. His smile was polished, predatory, and aimed directly at Isabella. Adrenaline surged. She felt Lorenzo stiffen an instant before his arm gently intercepted her line of sight. "Remember," Lorenzo murmured, "we're unbreakable." She tipped her chin. "You taught me marble can be cut but not shattered." His lips twitched despite the tension. They turned to greet Vitale as he approached with 2 bodyguards prowling behind. "Moretti," Vitale purred, lifting a crystal flute in mock salute. "And the enchanting Isabella. Word of your beauty undersold the truth." She met his gaze steady. "Flattery is cheap. I'm sure you can afford better." Lorenzo's nostrils flared with pride at her composure. Vitale's smile held. "Touché. I come bearing congratulations on your retirement. A pity to see a king abdicate." "Some inherit empires," Lorenzo replied coolly. "Others build legacies beyond bloodshed." Vitale's eyes gleamed. "Yet blood follows us wherever we tread. Old debts, for instance." Isabella felt rather than saw Lorenzo tense. She stepped forward, voice silk over steel. "Debts implied generosity once given. What kindness did you extend that we should repay, Signor Vitale?" His gaze flicked over her curves, lingered. "Rescuing your prince from a bullet meant for him many years ago. He promised recompense." Lorenzo's voice was a blade. "I haven't forgotten, but I repay debts with interest on my terms, not under threat." "Threat?" Vitale chuckled. "I bring olive branches." He produced a small velvet box. "A token for the lady." Lorenzo caught his wrist before he could open it, grip iron. "She's no pawn." Vitale's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then let her decide. Isabella laid a hand on Lorenzo's arm. "I can refuse gifts myself." She turned to Vitale. "Your token is unnecessary. My life is full." "A full life can always overflow," he murmured, bowing slightly. "Another time, perhaps." He retreated, shadows following. Lorenzo exhaled sharply. Isabella threaded her fingers through his. "He wanted to provoke you," she said. "And nearly succeeded," Lorenzo admitted, kissing her knuckles. "Thank you for the rescue." "You rescue me. I rescue you. That's how partnership works." His responding smile was soft, womanizing edges dulled by genuine affection. They drifted on, accepting compliments on the vintage and discussing Isabella's restoration work with a museum director, yet always aware of Vitale's distant orbit, like a predator testing fences. The quartet shifted to a sultry tango. Lorenzo raised an eyebrow, hand extended. "Dance? I thought you vowed never to weaponize jealousy again." "This is for us, no one else." His gaze was earnest, imploring. She surrendered her clutch to Caterina, placed her hand in his, letting him lead onto the flagstones cleared for dancing. His palm settled at her waist, her other hand clasped in his. The music coiled around them, slow, sensual. They moved in perfect synchrony. Memorized heartbeats finding rhythm. Lorenzo's breath brushed her ear. "Your courage humbles me," he whispered. "Your faith strengthens me," she answered, cheeks flushing as he guided her through a graceful pivot. Around them guests watched. Some smiled, others whispered, envious or awed. Isabella felt Vitale's stare prick the back of her neck, but ignored it, focusing on the warm slide of Lorenzo's thumb across her spine. For a moment, threat dissolved into moonlit serenity. The dance ended. Applause scattered like petals. Lorenzo pressed a tender kiss to her cheekbone. "Grazie, Anima mia. My pleasure. She felt buoyant, untouchable. From the terrace edge, fireworks arced skyward, blooming violet against the night. Guests oohed, turning away from the couple. Isabella sighed at the explosion of color, then stiffened when she felt air move behind her. A cloth pressed to her mouth, sweet chemical scent echo of a nightmare. She tried to scream, but sound died in her throat. Distantly, she heard Lorenzo shout her name, heard the clash of bodies, then darkness swept in like a cruel tide. When her vision tunneled, the last thing she saw was Vitale's satisfied smile flickering in the fireworks' ghostly glow. The pungent odor of diesel and damp canvas dragged Isabella back to consciousness. Her wrists were bound in front of her with zip ties, ankles similarly restrained, the floor of a moving van rattling beneath her spine. A single overhead bulb swung, throwing erratic shadows over two men in dark jackets, Vitale's soldiers, silhouetted near the rear doors. One checked his phone while the other watched her with bored suspicion. She forced a slow inhale, fighting panic. The van's suspension dipped, rose, dipped again. A country road, not autostrada. She listened for clues. The distant whir of a vineyard windmill. The brief echo of a narrow bridge. Memorize everything, she told herself. Miles mattered. Minutes mattered more. The guard with the phone noticed her eyes open. She's awake, he muttered in Italian. Water, she croaked, testing her voice. The knot in her throat tightened when he ignored her. The other man flicked his knife open, slicing the zip tie on her ankles only to rebind them looser. Comfort, he said with a crooked grin. She met his stare without blinking. Predators disliked prey that didn't flinch. Vitale wants her presentable, phone man warned. Knife man's leer faded. He wiped sweat on his sleeve, muttering curses. Isabella turned the exchange over in her mind, slotting motives in place. Vitale needed leverage, not corpses. That bought time. Her gaze drifted to the wheel well beneath her knees. A loose bolt jutted. She shifted, feigning discomfort, and inched her bound wrists toward the metal. The van veered hard left. Knife man stumbled, catching himself on the wall. Phone man cursed, grabbing the door handle for balance. Isabella felt plastic bite into metal. Friction heat flared. Once, twice, on the third pass, the zip tie nicked open. Almost imperceptible, but enough for slack. She kept her hands together, hiding the give. Outside gravel pinged the undercarriage and the engine downshifted. The vehicle slowed, headlights sweeping what looked like cypress trunks through gaps in the canvas. She tasted dust and wine must. Old estate roads winding through Tuscany's belly. Lorenzo, find me. The thought steadied her pulse. She pictured his face when fireworks turned to nightmare. The raw fear. The shouted command lost in screams. He would not stop. He would tear heaven apart to reach her, and she would give him every breadcrumb she could. The van rolled to a halt. Doors clanged open. Cool night air rushed in, laced with rosemary and stagnant water. Knife man hoisted her upright, phone man scanning the area before jerking his chin toward a crumbling stone archway. Beyond it loomed a villa in ruin, windows black, vines strangling the facade. Floodlights snapped on, carving hard lines across cracked marble steps. Vitale waited at the top, crisp suit untouched by dust. He smiled as Isabella was marched toward him. Welcome, Signorina. Apologies for the rough invitation. A polite kidnapper, how novel, she said, voice steady. He chuckled. Courageous, too. You chose your queen well, Moretti. He glanced beyond her at empty darkness where Lorenzo was not. The guards shoved her inside. The atrium smelled of mildew and old incense. Vitale signaled them to cut her ankle binding, then gestured toward a high-backed chair beneath a tarnished chandelier. Sit, please. Isabella complied, noting exits. Twin doors flanking a staircase, a corridor yawning left. One guard remained by the entrance. The other moved behind her. She pressed her freed wrists together, hiding the split tie. Vitali poured red wine into 2 goblets, offering one. She ignored it. What do you want? Closure. He swirled the wine. Lorenzo and I have unfinished accounts. His resignation leaves a void only a Moretti can fill. I intend to motivate his return. By threatening me. By reminding him of the cost of defiance. Vitali lifted the goblet to his lips, eyes never leaving hers. He will come. He always wanted to be the hero, even when we were boys. She held his gaze. Your fear tastes like sour grapes in that glass. A flicker of annoyance, he set the goblet down. Bravado will sour quicker. Isabella leaned forward slightly, testing the slackened tie. The board already voted. The empire is no longer his. Even if he came crawling, you gain nothing. Vitali's smile returned, thin and sharp. Love makes men reclaim things they swore to renounce. Isabella felt cold certainty settle. He didn't understand Lorenzo at all. Upstairs, a door slammed. Footsteps echoed. She lifted her chin. The thing about cages, she said, is they invite lockpicks. Vitali arched a brow. Metaphor? She slipped a hand free, flinging the severed tie at his feet. Knife Man lunged. She pivoted, using the chair's arm as leverage to drive her heel into his knee. He stumbled with a grunt. Phone Man surged forward, grabbing her shoulders. She raked nails down his face, satisfying scrape of skin. Before he could strike, Vitali hissed, Enough! Restrain her, properly. Rough hands yanked her upright. This time they cuffed her wrists behind the chair back, securing ankles to its legs. Pain shot through her shoulders. Vitali crouched, picking up the snapped tie. Impressive spirit, it will break eventually. She forced a smile. Count on it. Spirits love making liars of men like you. He backhanded her. Stars burst behind her eyes. Blood warmed her lip. Vitali straightened, brushing his sleeve. Inform me when Moretti arrives. He'll wish to see proof of life. The guards dragged the chair into the corridor's mouth, locking a gate behind them. Isabella tasted copper, spine throbbing. She breathed slow, steady. Lorenzo, come quickly. Outside the ruined villa, a black SUV idled with headlights killed. Within its shadowed interior, Lorenzo braced trembling hands against the dash. Matteo occupied the driver's seat, eyes scanning heat signatures on a small thermal monitor. 3 red shapes patrolled the courtyard, 2 more stationary at the atrium. Somewhere within, an ember flicker isolated. Isabella. She's restrained, Lorenzo said, voice ice over fire. Alive, Matteo answered. Her vitals strong enough to spike the sensor, no major blood loss. Tell Domenico to cut the power lines in 5, non-lethal if possible. Matteo relayed the order. Lorenzo checked the suppressed pistol holstered at his thigh, then hesitated. He'd promised her he would not return to violence, but promises meant nothing if she wasn't there to hold him to them. He exhaled raggedly. Memories flooded Isabella's laughter as she chased him through vineyard rows at dusk, grape juice staining her fingertips, the way she leaned into his shoulder when summer thunderstorms rattled their bedroom windows, the soft gasp when his lips traced the curve of her back. Every heartbeat revolved around her gravity. He closed his eyes, steeling himself. Ready, Matteo said. Move. They exited silently, slipping between cypress shadows. 2 guards loitered near a rusted fountain. Matteo signaled. Lorenzo advanced, catching the first in a chokehold, easing him to the ground. Matteo tasered the second before he could draw. They secured the bodies with zip ties, ironic turn, then continued. An explosion of sparks showered across distant power poles. Lights in the villa guttered, died. Shouts echoed. Lorenzo sprinted for the main doors, Matteo covering flank. Inside, flashlight beams jerked chaotic patterns. Gun raised, Lorenzo rounded a corner, encountering Knife Man mid-curse. One precise blow to the throat dropped him. Lorenzo pressed forward, guided by the faint signal flicker on a wrist tracker calibrated to Isabella's transmitter. Her clutch had been removed, but the device still pinged nearby, perhaps tossed aside when she was grabbed. He located it on a console table, blinking weakly. Pocketing the transmitter, he slowed his breathing, listening. A muffled voice drifted from deeper within. Vitale on a phone, arrogant and careless. Lorenzo's pulse hammered. Matteo gestured toward the corridor gate. Through iron bars, he glimpsed Isabella bound to a chair, silhouette tense, even in darkness. Blood darkened her lip. Rage blurred his vision. He told himself to count to 3, but only reached 2 before he fired at the padlock. Metal shrieked. The gate swung inward. "Bella," he whispered. Her head lifted, relief, fear, fire all at once. "Behind you." Knifeman's partner lunged from shadow. Matteo intercepted, grappling, the struggle crashing into crates stacked along the wall. Lorenzo crossed to Isabella, slicing cuffs with a combat knife. She collapsed forward into his arms, shoulders trembling. "I'm all right," she breathed, clinging. "Vitale's upstairs." He stroked her hair, voice shaking. "He touched you. Not the way you fear." She cupped his jaw, thumb brushing blood smeared from her lip. "Go finish this. I'll find Matteo a first aid kit." He forced a smile, always giving orders. "Partners, remember?" He kissed her forehead, then turned, fury honed to a singular edge. Matteo subdued the guard with a sleeper hold. Isabella knelt beside, using the man's shoelaces to bind wrists. Lorenzo almost laughed. She never stopped fighting. He pressed a spare pistol into her hand. "Stay with Matteo. 2 triggers to disengage safety. Point, breathe, squeeze." She accepted it without hesitation. "Bring him back alive or don't come at all." "I promise mercy, not leniency." He brushed his lips over hers, tasting iron and resolve, before sprinting toward the grand staircase. Carlo Vitale paced the master suite, phone clamped to his ear. "I control leverage," he bows. "Yes, I'll deliver the vineyards once he signs." He paused, hearing the faint creak of floorboards. "Hold." He turned, expecting a guard. Lorenzo stepped from shadow, eyes molten amber. Vitale's grin spread. "Speak of the devil." Lorenzo raised the pistol. "Put the phone down." "You surprise me. I expected negotiation." "My offer is silence, yours." Vitale laughed. "You were never a killer for sport. You were strategic. You need me alive to reclaim what's yours." "I need her safe." Lorenzo's finger tightened. Vitale's smile faltered. "Shoot me and her blood will flow next time. I have contingencies." "Broken contingencies." Lorenzo tossed a small device onto the carpet. It chirped. Matteo's scan jammer. "Your men can't call out. My people block every frequency within 5 kilometers." Vitale's gaze flicked to the blackout window. Rain started tapping cracked glass, thunder rolling across distant hills. "You'll doom us both to ruin." "I walked away from ruin already." A flicker of something, fear, respect, crossed Vitale's features. He slowly raised his hands. "So what now, St. Lorenzo? Redemption through restraint? You'll parade me before the authorities and lose face with every family." Lorenzo advanced, weapon steady. "I let you live as testament. Power built on fear collapses under love. Remember that while you rot behind gates you once locked." Vitale spat, lunging for a hidden drawer. Lorenzo fired, a clean shot through the shoulder. Vitale screamed, dropping to his knees. Blood blossomed against tailored wool. "Stay," Lorenzo commanded, kicking the drawer closed on a gleam of steel. He radioed Matteo. "Package secured. Call local carabinieri. Anonymous tip. Time to move." Thunder boomed again as he bound Vitale's hands with a ripped curtain tie. Sirens already wailed faintly in the valley. Matteo's contingency. Lorenzo dragged Vitale to the landing, propped him against the banister. "You'll never outrun your name," Vitale hissed. "I don't need to outrun it," Lorenzo replied. "I just need to live it differently." He turned, sprinting back down corridors to the place he'd left his heart. In the atrium, Isabella stood, pistol lowered, as Matteo guided stunned guests, now freed hostages, toward waiting vehicles. Firelight from toppled torches flickered over her gown, torn at the hem, blood drying to rust at her temple. Lorenzo crossed the distance in 3 strides, pulling her hard against him. She sagged with relief, fingers digging into his jacket. Alive? Alive. He pressed kisses along her hairline. And free. Matteo cleared his throat. Sirens less than 2 minutes. Lorenzo nodded, then scooped Isabella into his arms despite her protest. They exited into rain, Mercedes idling. Inside, safety and warm leather cocooned them as the sedan sped toward the private road. Isabella turned in his lap, cupping his cheeks. You showed mercy. He rested his forehead to hers. I showed you I can change. Tears mixed with rainwater on her lashes. Take me home. Lightning split the sky, illuminating her fierce, loving eyes. He kissed her gently, tasting salt and promise. Home, he vowed, as the road unfurled toward their dawn. Rain had faded to a light mist by the time the sedan crested the hill that sheltered their Tuscan villa. Dawn's first glow traced silver over vineyards, still shivering after the storm. Isabella dozed against Lorenzo's chest, spent from adrenaline, but she roused when the car stopped beneath the portico. He shifted to carry her again. She shook her head. I can walk, she whispered, and lean on me at least. She let him tuck an arm around her waist as they crossed the marble foyer. Inside, Caterina hurried forward with a blanket. Matteo peeled away to debrief the security team and coordinate with the carabinieri already detaining Vitale's men. Staff voices echoed, soft, efficient, then receded, as if the household collectively decided their employers needed solitude more than comfort. Lorenzo guided Isabella up the staircase to their suite. In the bathroom, he wet a cloth and crouched before her where she sat on the edge of the bed, silk gown rumpled and stained. He dabbed her split lip with featherlight care. You'll bruise, he murmured. I've survived worse than bruises. She caught his hand, stilling the cloth. I need truth, Lorenzo. How far does this ripple? He met her gaze. Vitale's grasp ends tonight. Whatever supporters he hadn't lost will scatter once they learn he's in custody, and I'm the witness who put him there. He exhaled, thumb brushing her cheek. No more knives in the dark? I'm done. A tear escaped despite her intent to appear strong. I hate that you had to fight again. So do I. He pressed her knuckles to his lip, but I'd march through hell for you. And I'd pull you back out. She cupped his jaw. We can't lose ourselves to that darkness. Promise me we keep choosing light, even when it's hard. I promise. His voice cracked on the vow. Exhaustion trembled through her limbs. He rose, rummaged for comfortable clothes, a cotton shirt for her, drawstring pants for himself. She slipped into the shirt, its hem brushing her thighs, while he showered quickly, emerging with damp hair slicked back. She took her turn beneath hot water, letting it pound away tremors. When she stepped out, steam clung to the mirror like a veil, but she could still see her own eyes. Brighter somehow, as if fire had forged resilience instead of fear. She found Lorenzo outside on the balcony, sunrise kindling copper in the clouds. He'd spread a thick quilt over the chaise longue facing the hills. A tray held fresh tea, strawberries, and croissants salvaged from the night before. He turned at her soft footsteps, relief easing lines of tension around his mouth. You should sleep, she said, after breakfast with you. He held out a hand. Stay. She curled beside him under the quilt. The world hushed except for distant birds waking in cypress branches. He poured tea, hands remarkably steady, now that danger had passed. I keep playing it back, he confessed. The moment I saw you vanish in the crowd, I felt my heart stop. I felt it start again when you burst through that gate, she answered, head resting on his shoulder. That's what matters. They shared quiet sips. He brushed a stray curl behind her ear. She closed her eyes, savoring the slide of his fingertips down her neck. The sun inched higher, gilding the quilt's folds, spilling warmth across their linked legs. The silence turned soft, then electric. Isabella lifted her gaze to his. I want tonight to erase everything Vitale tried to write into us. He searched her expression, cautious. You're exhausted. Not enough to forget how alive I feel. She stroked his chest where his heartbeat thudded through cotton. Make love to me, Lorenzo. Let's overwrite the fear. A low sound escaped him, half prayer, half surrender. He rose, scooped her into his arms again, not because she needed carrying, but because it thrilled them both. Inside, dawn painted golden ladders across the bed. He laid her among them as though placing something sacred on an altar. He kissed the bruise at her lip first, gentle as a feather, then trailed slow worship down her throat, tasting salt and rain. She arched toward him, hands slipping beneath his shirt to explore taut muscle and the thrum of life she'd feared to lose. He shivered when her nails grazed his back, hips rocking instinctively. She tugged at the shirt until it cleared his head. He helped her shed hers, gaze reverent on each new inch of skin. Words became unnecessary. His mouth traced the slope of her breast while his thumb soothed the faint mark where a guard's grip had bruised her arm. She threaded fingers through his hair, urging him closer. Heat pooled between them, slow and inexorable, as if the sunrise itself had seeped into their veins. He paused, breath ragged. Tell me if it hurts. It only heals, she whispered. He entered her with aching care, both of them gasping at the completeness of it. No walls, no shadows, only shared heartbeat. She cradled his face, guiding his rhythm, murmuring his name like a benediction. Their bodies moved in a tide older than fear, building from gentle to urgent as trust alchemized into something fierce and bright. When release broke over them, it felt less like shattering and more like opening, two souls unfurling new wings in tandem. He held her through the aftershocks, forehead pressed to hers, breath mingling, tears slipping unchecked down his cheeks. She kissed them away, tasting gratitude. They drifted in a haze of warmth until the sun stood fully above the hills. Sated and drowsy, she stroked his temple. You know what I realized while tied to that chair? She said. That you could overwhelm guards with shoelaces? His smile was soft. That I was never truly powerless. Loving you gave me my own strength. She sighed contentedly. Even if the world tries again, I'll never face it alone. Lorenzo's arms tightened. And I'll never let obsession masquerade as love again. You taught me the difference. A light knock interrupted. Matteo's voice carried through the door. Scusi, but the police would like a statement when convenient. Later, Lorenzo called back, then softer to Isabella. If you're willing. Together. She agreed. He brushed a lazy thumb over her hip. And after statements? We reopen the studio, my cherubs need finishing. And the vineyard needs new vines, perhaps an artist's retreat among the rows. She grinned, imagining easels dotting sunlit terraces. Then tonight we invite friends, raise glasses, and dance without fear. He kissed her palm. I'll follow your lead. They rose eventually, dressing in soft linen. Downstairs, Caterina gasped happily at their intertwined hands. Matteo escorted them to a sitting room where a carabinieri officer waited, respectful and discreet. Their statements were recorded, Vitale's fate sealed by their calm testimony. No guns lingered, no threats hissed. Just paperwork, signatures, closure. By afternoon, sunlight dazzled through restored stained glass panels in the atrium. Workers cleared the last remnants of the gala. Staff arranged new flowers. Lorenzo stood by the window, watching Isabella oversee the placement of a fresco fragment she'd saved from Vitale's ruin, intent on conserving beauty from darkness. He marveled at her resilience. She caught him staring, crossed the marble, and slipped her hand into his. Ready for the future, Signor Moretti? With you, Isabella Ferraro, I'm ready for anything. They stepped onto the terrace where the vineyard stretched vivid green under a turquoise sky. A fresh breeze stirred cypress branches, carrying the scent of lavender and hope. As they walked side by side toward the rows ready for harvest, Lorenzo felt the last chains of his past loosen and fall away, not with a clang, but with the whisper of leaves. He squeezed Isabella's hand, pulse steady for the first time in years, and knew without doubt that debts were paid, storms had passed, and love, chosen freely, was the legacy they would cultivate from this day forward.